All right, ready to dive into something pretty big. Today we're tackling AI.
Not just the headlines, though.
Right, we're going deeper than that.
Way deeper.
Like, how is this stuff going to change what it even means to be human, you know?
That's exactly what Carlos Goga explores in his book.
Dancing our way to human AI consciousness, right?
That's the one. Coming out soon.
I gotta say, that title alone really got my attention. So for folks who haven't read it yet, what's the big idea Goga's grappling with here?
Well, he starts with this really basic question. It's one that's been around forever. How do we become better? How do we improve ourselves as humans?
Okay, classic philosophical question, but...
But he's asking it in the context of the 21st century where AI is everywhere, right? So it's not like looking back to old traditions for answers.
Yeah, I get it. The old narratives, religion, consumerism, they just don't quite fit anymore when you're talking about AI reshaping everything.
Exactly. Goga's saying we need a totally new framework, a new way of understanding our place in this AI-infused world.
And that's where the whole dancing metaphor comes in.
You got it. Dancing our way to human AI consciousness. It's not just a catchy title.
More than a catchy title. Come on, spill it.
He actually uses dance as this brilliant metaphor to explain how we should, really how we must approach AI if we want to get this right.
Okay, I'm hooked. Break it down for me.
So he breaks it down into 5 parts, 5 elements of the dance, if you will. The dance room, the dancer, their attitude, then the actual footsteps, and then this final, ultimate tango with AI itself.
All right, I love a good breakdown. So the dance room, what's that about?
Think of that as our worldview, right?
Yeah.
But it's like our worldview updated for the age of AI. It's about realizing that tech and our minds, our consciousness, they're completely intertwined now. We can't separate them.
So it's not just about ones and zeros over here, human brains over there.
Nope. It's all one big complex system now.
We're all part of...
Exactly. We're all in this dance room together.
Okay, makes sense. So who are we then in this dance room, I mean?
We're the dancers.
Hmm.
But here's where Gogi gets really interesting, because he doesn't want us to be these passive dancers, just being pushed around the dance floor by forces we don't understand. He wants us to be active, shaping the dance.
We're leading, not just following.
Exactly. We get to choreograph this thing, at least to some extent.
I like that. Taking ownership. But like with any good dance partner, gotta make sure we bring the right attitude. What's the vibe we're going for here on the AI dance floor?
Well, Goga, he uses these 2 phrases. Ethical alignment, that's a big one for him.
That makes sense. Morality in the age of AI. Gotta figure that out.
Right. But then, and this is maybe a little less expected, he also talks about conscious love.
Whoa, hold on. Conscious love sounds a little, you know...
Yeah, I know it sounds a bit out there.
A little bit.
But he doesn't mean it in some, fluffy way. He's really talking about approaching AI with both our heads and our hearts.
Right.
We need to value things like compassion, empathy, collaboration, all that good stuff.
So less Terminator, more, I don't know, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers.
You got it. He actually even uses the tango as an analogy later on, because it requires that balance, you know? It's about mutual respect, connection between partners, enhancing each other's moves.
Not about one partner dominating the other.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm really digging this metaphor, but all this talk about the dance, we gotta actually move at some point, right?
Of course. He gets to that.
What are the footsteps he's talking about?
That's all about taking action, not just talking about it, but what are the concrete things we can do?
Got it. So what are some examples of those footsteps?
Well, for example, setting ethical guidelines, right, for how we develop and use AI. Or promoting education, helping people understand this stuff better, the good and the bad.
So it's about making conscious, intentional choices that reflect those values we're talking about.
100%. It's about shaping the future instead of letting it just happen to us.
Okay, I'm totally on board with that. It's we're all learning the steps together, right? Figuring out this dance as we go.
That's a great way to put it. But here's where it gets even deeper. Goga says AI isn't just going to impact our actions, those footsteps, but the very core of who we are. He calls it the skeleton of self.
Skeleton of self. Okay, now you're just messing with me, right? What does that even mean?
I know, right? It sounds kind of intense, but it makes sense when you hear him explain it.
All right, I'm listening. Hit me with it.
So Goga, he's using the skeleton as this metaphor for all the layers that make up a human being.
Like what kind of layers?
Well, everything from those deep down instincts, those basic drives we all have.
Yeah, the stuff we don't really think about, but it kind of runs the show.
Exactly. All the way up to Our values, right?
Yeah.
Our aspirations, what we believe in, what we find meaningful in life, all those layers.
Okay, so our whole sense of self, and he's saying AI could mess with that.
It's not mess with exactly. It's more like reshape.
Yeah.
It could change how we understand those different layers. And he says it starts with narratives, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are.
Ooh, I see where you're going with this.
Think about how social media already does that to some extent. The algorithms, they decide what we see, what we're exposed to.
So true. Like all those targeted ads, they definitely influence what we think about, what we want.
Right. And imagine AI doing that, but on a much deeper level. Like it's not just showing you an ad for a new pair of shoes.
It's showing you a whole different way to live your life.
Potentially.
Mm.
Goga even talks about AI being able to craft these incredibly compelling personalized narratives.
Mm-hmm.
Like imagine getting a motivational speech, but it's written just for you, based on everything AI knows about your hopes and fears.
Okay, and that's both amazing and a little creepy.
Right. It's like powerful, but also potentially manipulative.
Like who controls the AI storyteller? And what kind of story are they trying to tell me?
Exactly. And Goga acknowledges that. He says we need to be really careful, make sure AI is developed and used ethically. But hold on to your hat because it gets even wilder.
Wilder. How could it possibly get wilder than AI writing my life story?
Because what if AI doesn't just stop at influencing our narratives? What if it starts creating its own?
Wait, you're saying AI could become like an author?
Yeah,
A philosopher?
potentially. I mean, imagine AI making scientific discoveries we haven't even dreamed of, exploring complex philosophical questions, maybe even starting new religions.
Okay, now you're blowing my mind. So it's not just that AI understands us better than we understand ourselves.
Which is a whole other can of worms, by the way.
Right, but it could start generating completely new knowledge and new ways of seeing the world that we haven't even considered.
That's exactly what Goga's getting at. And he says that forces us to really confront this question. What does it even mean to be human if AI is out there independently exploring consciousness, creating on its own?
It's almost like, are we even the main characters in our own story anymore?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And Goga doesn't just leave it hanging out there in the ether. He brings it down to earth, talks about how it affects our everyday lives.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, let's take work, our jobs. That's a huge part of how we define ourselves.
Totally. What you do for a living, it's like your identity.
And Goga says AI has the potential to substitute for us in a lot of those roles.
Yeah.
And not just like the boring factory jobs, but things we think of as requiring human expertise.
Oh, yeah. Everyone's worried about robots taking over the world, but they always say, don't worry, the creative jobs are safe.
Yeah, not so fast. Goga's talking about AI writing reports, designing buildings, maybe even diagnosing illnesses.
Whoa. I mean, that could be amazing. Imagine if AI could take over all the tedious parts of our jobs.
Right. Like free up all that time and energy for us to focus on things that really matter.
But also, what happens if my job becomes obsolete? If an AI can do it better, faster, cheaper, what happens to my sense of purpose, my livelihood?
Exactly. And Goga doesn't shy away from that at all. He says we might need to completely rethink our relationship with work. Like, what if instead of defining ourselves by our jobs, what if we found meaning in other things?
Like what? What else is there?
He talks a lot about creativity, for one. Like, what if everyone had the time and freedom to pursue their passions, to make art, to write music, to invent new things?
Instead of being stuck in a cubicle all day just to pay the bills.
Exactly. And community involvement, too. Contributing to something larger than ourselves. And then, of course, lifelong learning, always expanding our minds, exploring new things.
So it's not about working ourselves to death and then retiring to finally do what we love. It's about finding meaning and purpose outside of the traditional job.
Precisely. Goga even suggests that concepts like universal basic income, where everyone gets a guaranteed income regardless of whether they're employed.
That's a whole other conversation.
It is, but he's saying that might become not just desirable, but necessary as AI changes the very fabric of the job market.
It's a lot to think about.
It really is. And it's not just work, right? What about our relationships, our connections with other people? How does AI fit into that whole equation?
I mean, I've seen those Black Mirror episodes.
Yeah, we've all seen those. But think about the potential for AI companions. Imagine an entity that's available 24/7, providing support, understanding, companionship that's completely tailored to you.
Like an AI best friend who always gets you, always has your back, no matter what.
It's a possibility, right? But then, of course, that raises all sorts of questions about human connection. Like, will we become so reliant on AI companions that our expectations for human relationships are totally skewed.
Right, like no real person could ever live up to that.
Exactly. It's a lot to consider. The potential benefits, the unforeseen consequences, it could feel pretty overwhelming.
So how do we even begin to navigate this future? With so much uncertainty swirling around, what are we supposed to do?
Well, Goga, he says a key skill we're all going to need is what he calls emotional intelligence.
Emotional intelligence. Okay, I hear that phrase thrown around a lot these days. What does it actually mean in this context? Like, with AI changing everything.
Yeah, it's one of those buzzwords, right?
Yeah.
But it's actually super relevant here.
So break it down for me. What does emotional intelligence look like when we're talking about, dancing with AI?
Basically, it comes down to being aware of our emotions.
Right. Okay. Self-awareness. Check.
And the emotions of others, too. But then, the key part, being able to actually navigate those emotions effectively.
Especially when everything's changing so fast.
Exactly. And let's be real, AI is going to trigger some big emotions for a lot of people.
No kidding. It's kind of a big deal.
Right. We're talking about the future of humanity here. So, yeah, people are going to feel fear, anxiety, maybe some excitement too, right?
A little bit of wonder, maybe.
Sure. But here's the thing. Goga, he says if we're not careful, those knee-jerk reactions, those emotional impulses, they can lead us down some bad paths.
Like, what do you mean?
Well, think about it. If we approach AI from a place of fear, what's going to happen? We either try to shut it down completely.
Which, good luck with that, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Or we go the other way and we become totally dependent on it.
Like, we give up, just let AI make all the decisions.
Exactly. And that's not good either, right? We lose our agency, our ability to shape our own future.
So it's like that classic fight, flight, or freeze response. None of those are going to help us here.
Nope. Those are our primal instincts kicking in, and they're not always helpful, especially in this new landscape.
So what's the alternative? How do we approach AI with, emotional intelligence?
Goga says we got to lead with calmness, first of all.
Easier said than done when you're talking about robots taking over the world?
I know, right? But that's where the emotional intelligence comes in. It's about being aware of those fears, those anxieties, but not letting them control us.
Okay. So calmness. What else?
Curiosity. We need to approach AI with a sense of wonder, a desire to understand it, rather than just judging it right off the bat.
Oh, I like that. So instead of freaking out about all the ways AI could go wrong?
We ask, what if we could use this incredible technology to actually make the world a better place?
Right. Focus on the positive potential.
Exactly. And then, this is a big one, grounding ourselves in our values.
Our values.
Yeah. Like, what do we as humans actually care about? What kind of future do we want to create?
And then figuring out how AI can help us get there.
Yeah, got it. It's about using AI as a tool to help us achieve our goals, to live out our values, rather than letting it dictate our values to us.
I'm starting to see how emotional intelligence is like our superpower in this whole AI dance.
Totally. It helps us to think clearly, make conscious choices, even when the future feels uncertain. It's like having that inner compass.
Okay, I love that analogy. Our inner compass guiding us through uncharted territory. So how do we actually put this into practice? How do we strengthen that emotional intelligence muscle?
Well, remember we were talking about the dance metaphor?
Yeah, the dance room, the dancer, all that.
Each part of that metaphor can actually help us develop our emotional intelligence.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for me.
So the dance room, remember, that's about cultivating a broader perspective.
Right, zooming out, seeing the bigger picture.
Exactly. We need to understand that AI isn't just some isolated thing. It's woven into the very fabric of our world.
We're all connected.
Yes. And then the dancer, that's about recognizing our own agency. We're not just puppets here.
We have a choice.
We have a say in how this dance unfolds. We can choose to be active participants, to shape the future with AI. And then the attitude, we talked about that earlier.
Ethical alignment, conscious love, all that good stuff.
Right. That's all about approaching AI with curiosity, openness, even a sense of wonder, instead of just fear or judgment.
Which is hard. I mean, it's easier said than done.
It is hard. It takes practice. But that's where the emotional intelligence comes in. It helps us to choose those more positive, constructive responses.
And then, of course, there are the footsteps, the actual actions we take.
Right, like educating ourselves about AI, having those tough conversations about ethics, supporting organizations that are trying to do this right.
So emotional intelligence isn't just about how we think and feel. It's about what we do.
100%. It's about showing up, making choices that are aligned with our values, even when it's hard.
Okay, love it. So we've got the dance room, the dancer, the attitude, the footsteps. And that all leads up to the tango itself, the big dance with AI.
Exactly. And just like any good tango, it's all about finding that balance, that harmony.
Not about one partner dominating the other.
Exactly. It's about partnership, mutual respect, working together to create something beautiful and powerful.
And maybe a little bit unpredictable.
Oh, absolutely. There will be missteps along the way, guaranteed.
But that's part of the fun, right? Figuring it out as we go.
Exactly. Embracing the unknown, adapting to new challenges, that's what makes the dance so exciting.
Well, on that note, I think we've done some pretty good dancing today, wouldn't you say?
I think so. We've explored some pretty complex territory.
We have. And I, for one, feel a lot more optimistic about the future after this conversation.
Me too. It's easy to get caught up in the fear, but when we approach AI with emotional intelligence, with those values of conscious love and collaboration.
We can actually shape a future that benefits everyone.
Exactly. It's not going to be easy, but it's definitely a dance worth dancing.
Couldn't agree more. A huge thank you to Carlos Goga for getting this conversation started, and to you for being such a fantastic guide.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all our listeners, keep those minds curious and those dancing shoes laced up tight. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.